You ever see someone and just know they don't belong? That was Kyle, the kid everyone ignored, the kid everyone mocked. Glasses too big, arms too full of books, like he carried the whole world but didn't belong in it. And on one Friday afternoon, I made a split-second choice, one that seemed so small at the time, but ended up saving his life. And when he revealed the truth years later, every single person who ever laughed at him froze in their seats. If you've ever dreamed of seeing justice served to those who think they're untouchable, hit that like button, subscribe, and buckle up. Because this story, it's proof that one act of kindness can flip the entire script and leave the bullies wishing they'd never opened their mouths. Part 1. The Friday Afternoon. It was one of those Fridays where the air feels alive, when you can practically taste freedom in the breeze. School was out, the weekend was calling, and I had one thing on my mind: the party that night. I was popular back then, the kind of kid who always had a group around, always had somewhere to go, always had an invite. I'd love to tell you I earned it because I was kind or talented, but no, it was mostly just confidence and luck. And honestly, a little arrogance. That's when I saw him. Kyle. At that point, he was just that kid. The one you didn't know well but recognized. Tall but hunched over, like he was trying to fold into himself. Glasses that always slid down his nose. And his arms? Full. Stacked with textbooks, like he was moving the whole library back to his house. I remember smirking. Who does that? I thought. Who takes every single book home on a Friday? What a nerd. I kept walking. My mind was already at the party. But then it happened. A group of guys, the kind who thrived on other people's misery, crossed paths with Kyle. One of them stuck out his foot. Kyle went flying. Books exploded across the sidewalk like an avalanche. His glasses cracked under someone's sneaker as they stomped them into the dirt. And the laughter. God, the laughter. I froze, because in that moment, Kyle didn't just look clumsy. He didn't just look like a nerd. He looked broken. Like he'd been holding it together all day, all week, maybe all year. And this one stupid trip had finally shattered him. The choice. Now, here's where I'd love to tell you I marched up and tore into those bullies. That I was the hero. But the truth? For a second, I almost didn't do anything. That's the part that still haunts me. I could have walked away, pretended I didn't see it. That's what most people did. But something in me twisted. I couldn't stomach it. Not this time. So I walked over, bent down, started picking up his books. "Hey, man," I said. "You okay?" He looked at me like no one had ever asked him that before. His face was red, his lip trembling. But then he smiled. Barely. Just enough to let me know he wasn't completely gone. His name was Kyle, and for reasons I can't explain, before I left, I asked him if he wanted to come to the party. The beginning of something I didn't expect him to actually show. But later that night, there he was, standing awkwardly in the doorway, like he wasn't sure if he belonged. And you know what? He was actually cool, smart, funny, sharp in ways most people overlooked. That Monday, he came back with his books again. But this time, he didn't walk alone. I walked with him. And slowly, other people did too. By senior year, we were inseparable. He wasn't the quiet nerd anymore. He had confidence, he had friends, he had girls who liked him. He'd grown into someone magnetic. And everyone who used to trip him, stomp on his glasses, or laugh behind his back, now wanted to sit at his table. The graduation build-up fast forward to graduation. Kyle was top of the class, the guy chosen to give the valedictorian speech. He was nervous, sweating bullets. I told him he'd be fine. But when he walked up to that podium, he didn't pull out his prepared notes. He cleared his throat, looked at the entire class, and said, "Most of you don't know this, but there was a time I didn't think I'd make it here. In fact, I almost didn't." The room went still. See, on the first Friday of freshman year, I took all my books home. Not because I was eager to study, but because I was planning to end my life that weekend. I didn't want my mom to have to come clean out my locker. You could hear the gasps ripple across the room. He paused, swallowed hard. But then, someone stopped. Someone helped me pick up my books. Someone invited me to a party. And in that tiny moment, I realized maybe life was worth holding on to. And then he looked right at me. He saved my life. And he didn't even know it. I swear, you could have heard a pin drop. Every single bully in that gym, every single person who had mocked him, stepped on his glasses, tripped him, laughed at him, sat there in shame, while the kid they tried to crush stood tall, celebrated, and loved. Part 2. Kyle's transformation plus the bully's silent downfall. After that first party, Kyle didn't magically become the most popular kid in school. This wasn't some cheesy teen movie where one night changes everything. But little by little, things shifted. He started sitting with me at lunch. At first, people side-eyed it. "Why's he here?" I could practically hear them whisper. But I didn't care. And eventually, the whispers stopped. Kyle had this way of speaking that was disarming. He wasn't loud, but when he said something, people listened. He was smart, not just in a textbook way, but in a sees-through-the-nonsense way. His humor was dry, almost sarcastic, but never cruel. And the more he let that out, the more people leaned in. It was subtle at first. A couple of classmates laughed at his joke. Someone asked him for help on homework. A girl complimented his shirt. Then it snowballed. By sophomore year, Kyle wasn't the nerd. He was the guy people actually wanted around. He started tutoring a few people, and not in that boring, robotic way, but in a way that actually made them laugh while learning. His confidence grew. He even ditched the hunched walk. I'll never forget the first time he came to school without his giant backpack full of every single book. He carried just one, casually slung at his side. It was like a silent statement. I don't need to hide behind these anymore. And the bullies? They noticed. The bullies lose control. High school bullies thrive on control, on being the center of attention, on making someone else smaller so they feel bigger. But what happens when their favorite target isn't a target anymore? They flailed. I remember one day at lunch, one of them tried to trip Kyle again, just like that very first Friday. Only this time, Kyle didn't stumble. He caught himself, shot the guy a look, and smirked. "Really? Still trying that?" he said calmly. The cafeteria erupted in laughter, but not at Kyle, at the bully. That was the beginning of the end for them, because humiliation is like blood in the water. Once people sense it, the bullies lose their edge. And slowly, people stopped fearing them. By junior year, the roles had flipped. The same guys who used to shove Kyle into lockers were now trying to get invited to the same parties he was going to. I even overheard one of them asking him for help in math class. Kyle didn't gloat. That wasn't his style. He just smiled politely, helped when he felt like it, and kept living his life. But you could see it in their eyes. The shame, the regret, the realization that they'd burned a bridge with someone who had become untouchable. Kyle and me. By this time, Kyle wasn't just my friend. He was my best friend. We spent weekends hanging out, playing video games, watching movies, talking about everything from dumb memes to deep stuff, like what we wanted from life. And here's the part that hit me hardest. Kyle never once brought up that Friday. Never once mentioned the books, the bullying, the glasses. It was like he didn't want to burden me with it. Like he was grateful but didn't want me to know just how much it mattered. But sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, I caught him staring off. That faraway look in his eyes, like he was remembering something dark. And I knew there was more beneath the surface. Senior year by senior year, Kyle wasn't just respected. He was admired. Teachers loved him. Girls liked him. Guys wanted to be his friend. And it wasn't fake. He'd earned it. He worked hard, stayed kind, never stooped to cruelty even when he had the chance. He also had the best grades in our class, which meant one thing. He was chosen as valedictorian. When he told me, he was nervous. "Man, I don't know if I can do this," he admitted one night while we were hanging out. "You'll kill it," I said without hesitation. "You're Kyle. You've been through worse than a speech." He laughed, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. What I didn't know was that he wasn't nervous about public speaking. He was nervous because he knew what he was going to reveal. Graduation day. The gymnasium was packed. Families crammed into the bleachers, fans humming above, the smell of flowers and fresh-pressed suits mixing in the air. We marched in, caps and gowns swishing, cameras flashing. It felt surreal. 4 years of drama, homework, heartbreaks, victories, all leading to this. When it was time for the valedictorian speech, Kyle stepped up to the podium. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the microphone. I gave him a thumbs up from my seat. He smiled nervously back. Then he took a deep breath, and instead of pulling out his neatly written notes, he folded the paper and set it aside. "I want to tell you all a story," he began. The room quieted instantly. "Most of you don't know this," Kyle said, his voice steady now. "But on the very first Friday of freshman year, I took all my books home. Every single one. And some of you probably thought it was because I was a nerd or obsessed with studying. But that's not the truth." A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. He paused, looking down for a moment before continuing. "The truth is, I was planning to take my own life that weekend. I didn't want my mom to have to come clean out my locker. I wanted to save her that pain." You could have heard a pin drop. The air itself seemed to freeze. He swallowed hard, his voice cracking just slightly. "But on the way home, something happened. I got tripped. My books went everywhere. My glasses got broken. And for a moment, I felt like maybe that was the universe telling me I didn't belong, that I was right to give up." The audience shifted uncomfortably. Parents exchanged glances. Teachers looked stunned. But then, someone stopped. Someone helped me pick up my books. Someone invited me to a party. Someone reminded me, without even knowing it, that maybe life wasn't done with me yet. And then, he looked straight at me. That someone was my best friend. He saved my life. And he didn't even know it. Part 3, Finale plus Reflection plus Outro. The moment Kyle's words echoed across the gym, it was like time itself stopped. Hundreds of people sat frozen in their seats. Students, parents, teachers, siblings. The whispers that had rippled a minute earlier were gone. The air was heavy. And me? I felt like my entire chest had been hollowed out and filled with fire. He had carried that weight all these years. The books, the broken glasses, the humiliation, the decision to end it all. He had carried it alone. And I had no idea. But then I looked around. I saw the bullies. The same ones who thought tripping him was hilarious. The ones who once stomped his glasses into the dirt and laughed like hyenas. Now? They weren't laughing. They weren't smirking. They weren't anything. Their faces were pale, their eyes locked on the floor, their shoulders stiff, jaws clenched, like they wanted to vanish into their gowns. One of them shifted uncomfortably, like he couldn't sit still in the weight of what Kyle had said. Another chewed on his lip, face red, neck blotched. For once in their lives, they were powerless. No comeback, no insult, no way to twist this into a joke, because Kyle had just turned their cruelty into a public confession of what almost killed him, and what had ultimately saved him. Kyle finishes his speech. Kyle let the silence hang, letting everyone in that gym feel it. Then he smiled. Not bitter, not angry, just grateful. I stand here today, not because I was the smartest or the strongest, he continued, but because someone reminded me that kindness exists, and that, sometimes, even one small act can save a life. He looked at me again. My throat tightened. My eyes burned. To my best friend, thank you. You gave me a tomorrow when I didn't think I had one. He stepped back, voice trembling now, and the entire gym erupted. Thunderous applause. Cheers! Some people even stood up, clapping until their hands turned red. And me? I couldn't move. I just sat there, tears running down my face, trying to process the fact that I had almost lost him before I even knew him. The bullies' silent defeat. But if you really want to know what satisfaction looks like, it was the faces of those bullies. Their hands didn't clap. Their eyes didn't meet anyone's. They sat stiff, trapped in their own guilt. One of them tried to force a half smile, like maybe he could brush it off. But no one was buying it. Not when the truth had been laid out so raw. You could almost see the moment they realized their power was gone. The same cruelty that once made them kings of the hallway now branded them cowards in front of everyone. Their laughter had nearly ended a life. And now, instead of making people laugh with them, they were the ones everyone was silently judging. That was the revenge. Not fists, not fights, not detention or suspensions, but truth. Kyle's truth, spoken out loud, leaving them with nothing but shame. And honestly, it was better than any punch could have ever been. After the ceremony. When the graduation ended, families poured out into the parking lot, taking photos, hugging, crying, celebrating. I found Kyle, and before he could say a word, I pulled him into the tightest hug I think I've ever given anyone. You never told me, I whispered. He shrugged, smiling sadly. Didn't want you to feel responsible. But I had to say it today. People needed to know. I pulled back and looked him in the eyes. You scared the hell out of me. He chuckled softly. Sorry about that. But then he said something I'll never forget. You know, living well is the best revenge, right? I think we just proved it. And he was right. Because as we stood there, friends and family surrounding us, the bullies walked past. No laughter, no swagger. Just quick, embarrassed glances before they ducked their heads and disappeared into the crowd. Kyle didn't even look at them. He didn't need to. Reflection. The true revenge. Here's the thing. Revenge doesn't always come in the form of getting back at someone. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is just proving them wrong. Those bullies thought Kyle was weak. They thought he was worthless. They thought their laughter defined him. But in the end, he defined himself. He rose above. He became someone admired, loved, celebrated. And those bullies? They'll always remember the day the kid they mocked stood on stage, exposed their cruelty, and turned it into his victory. Kyle didn't just survive, he thrived. And that was the ultimate revenge. Narrator's closing thoughts. I think about that day a lot, about how close the world came to losing him, about how one small choice, stopping to help, inviting him to a party, changed everything. It terrifies me sometimes to imagine what would have happened if I had kept walking, if I'd decided the party was more important. And it reminds me every single day, the smallest act of kindness can carry a weight you'll never fully understand. Because you never know who's fighting battles in silence. You never know who's one cruel joke away from giving up. And you never know whose life you might save just by reaching out your hand.